This week's school shooting was a tragedy taking the lives of nearly 24 children. And now parents are wondering how they'll discuss such a devastating event with their children in a way that doesn't leave the child fearful to go to school or even summer camp. Dr. Clifton Mixon is a child psychologist at Oxnard Hospital for Children, and he's joining us this morning to share strategies to help parents talk to their kids about scary things happening close to home and far away. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you, Sheba. It's a hard conversation.
It is. This shooting is disturbing to adults, and you can only imagine in a child's mind how frightening this is.
It is. It's terrifying. And, you know, I grew up in the Columbine generation where this was like a rare incident, and this is becoming increasingly frequent. And so kids hear about it and they wonder if this is going to happen to them.
Sure. So how should you start this conversation with your kids? And should you start it or should you wait for them to talk to you?
So you should start it. You should not wait for them to talk to you. A lot of parents would shy away from this conversation, worrying that if I bring up these topics with my kids, is this going to cause more anxiety when they weren't going to have it anyway?
Right.
And so you do want to check in with them. And so you first start by checking in and learning a little bit more about what they know, what their thoughts are, what they're experiencing. And more often than not, we're going to find that kids are thinking about things even when they're not talking about it. They know this is happening. And so once you check in and you kind of get a sense for where they are, you can take two more strategies. You can kind of clarify the information that they have.
Right, because that's the
them.
hard thing. If they're watching it on TV or hearing it from friends, again, they're children. They're probably not completely understanding what's going on.
They're not. And so really the best strategy, I guess the best defense is good offense. You really want to protect your kids from what they're seeing too. So kids should not be watching the news on their own. It should not be running in the background. If kids are seeing what's on the news, it should be with their parents.
Gotcha.
And so that way you can try and protect them from it, but once they hear the information, you want to clarify any misinformation. Kids might hear things from their friends at school or make assumptions, and so help make sure they have the right information to know that they are safe. And then the next thing you want to do is try and console them. And we console kids by providing them a sense of control over their environment. So keeping routines the same, making sure that they kind of understand what you're doing to help them feel safe, and then establishing safety. And so really helping them feel safe in the world. But it's very tempting when you console a child to tell them there's no reason to be afraid.
Yeah.
And that's probably the worst thing you can do, because
Really?
there is a reason to be afraid.
Sure.
I mean,
So what does that conversation look like if your child says, Mommy, I watched this, or Daddy, I watched this, and I'm afraid? How do you give them reassurance?
yeah, you let them know, well, it is scary. You know, these things happen in the world. And these are the things that your teachers are doing to keep you safe, the things that your school is doing to keep you safe. And you really want to consider the kids' developmental level. So for young kids, you want to, you know, maybe keep it shorter, kind of keep it simple, and maybe redirect some of the conversation to the positives of what happened, the heroes who saved lives, all the people coming together to donate blood, because at that age, they really can't process information the same. But with older kids, you can really engage them in kind of expressing their emotions about it, their fear about it, and then kind of engaging in problem solving and helping them think about, well, what actions can we take? Is it writing letters to your legislators asking them to take action? Is it advocating for gun safety at their school? And so help them feel like they can do something about it.
And is there an age that's too young to have this conversation?
Oh, I mean, if they can talk,
Really?
if they can talk sentences to you, I think it could be helpful just to check in, and you can check in generally what they hear about the news. But really, kids are smart and they absorb a lot of information, and just because they're not talking about it doesn't mean they're not thinking about it.
Definitely. And I know you say to check in more than one time.
Yes.
How often's too much, though, without creating paranoia?
Certainly. So, you know, I think when these things happen, you want to check in afterwards, especially when it's very active in the news. And then once you kind of have this discussion with them, check in after and see how they're feeling. And then you can probably, you know, leave the conversation out for a while. And when things happen again and it's in the news again, you want to bring it back up. So certainly don't, you know, every other day kind of check in and see how they're feeling about it. But certainly if your child is having a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear, you do want to check in more regularly. And then certainly if they're having a lot and your conversations aren't helping, you want to bring them to someone like me to see if they can get some help.
And how would a parent know when they need to come to someone like you? You mentioned that fear and anxiety. Some kids aren't very vocal, so that can manifest itself in different ways.
It can. So younger kids are going to manifest more in just kind of changes in kind of speech and language and kind of behavior. Older children are going to have more stomach aches, nausea, school avoidance, being kind of clingy, fearful, things like that. So, you'll notice kind of these behavioral changes in your child. And so when you see these behavioral changes, even if they're not articulating it to you, you might want to bring them to someone to talk to.
Gotcha.
To kind of learn some skills for coping with kind of this reality that we're in.
And parents can start that conversation, I would imagine, with their pediatricians.
They can.
Okay.
They can.
All right. Dr. Mixon, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Guys, another tip, children look to their parents to see how they respond. So parents should be making sure they're handling their grief and stress in a healthy way as well.